Hello and welcome. Really excited about another great edition with our College Coaches Corner. And today we're going to be talking with one of the preeminent college coaches in the country with regard to development and overall, academic and athletic development. John Yurkow is the head coach at the University of Pennsylvania. And we also have the head coach of Johnson University, affectionately referred to as Skip, Dave Serrano. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join me here today.
Appreciate you having me, Walter.
It's good to be back with you, Skip, because a lot of people always in my travels or conversations are always asking is Dave Serrano ever going to come back on and be a part of the podcast? Well, he's a little busy these days. And oh, by the way, congratulations on being a part of 1,300 victories and tremendous accomplishment. But welcome back.
Thanks, Walter. I appreciate it. And people ask me all the time when I'm on the road, when are you going to get back on with Walter? So you're much more popular than I am. Oh. So, John, it's great to see you. I know you and I run into each other 8 to 10 times during the summer all the time. I want to talk to you about Showball showcases. I know as a coach myself, I know your summer is impacted. You and your assistant coaches are all over the place all the time because it's important to go find the next student athlete that could academically reach your standards and athletically reach your standards. Why Showball? Why is Showball such a place that attracts you to go there as the head coach? All those academic camps to see the next wave of student athletes?
Yeah, I think being a pretty highly respected academic institution, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because we get to recruit the entire country, but that can be a difficult task. 4 coaches who get out on the road, and the summers get more and more compressed every year. So I think one of the things that Showball offers, there's a few things, but being able to travel the country and to different locations and go to one event where we can see multiple kids that we've, maybe have a relationship with or we've seen on video. It's been extremely beneficial for us over the years. I think I like the way it's structured. I think you can accomplish quite a few things in that 2-day event because you get to spend a lot of time around the kids. You get to interact with them and also see not just what they're like on the baseball field, but if they're going to be a coachable kid, and just with their personality, if you think it's going to be a fit.
Oftentimes, John, when I'm talking with parents, there can be an intimidation with regard to the Ivy League caliber academics and also the athletics that have now truly been elevated across the entire conference. What type of strategies or game plans do you and your staff offer your student athletes as far as being able to maintain the balance between the rigors of the UPenn academics as well as the rigors of the UPenn athletics?
Well, I think first and foremost for us when we're recruiting kids, the one thing we really want to drive home is that we want to get kids that love playing baseball. And that's really important. And that's kind of how we start things off. Obviously, if you come to Penn, graduate, you're gonna receive an unbelievable education, something that you'll be able to carry with you for the rest of your life. And I think for most of these guys, that's really the end goal, right? But while you're there, the baseball experience, it's my job to make that as awesome as possible for these kids, these student athletes on a daily basis. So just trying to find kids that love to play baseball first that are also very good students. And I think that's the big separator. I think it's allowed us to recruit some tougher kids. Kids just really like spending a lot of time in the locker room at the field. Obviously, academically, to kind of get back to your question, Walter, there are certain classes that are going to be harder than others. But I think the way we kind of spin it here, we don't use baseball as an excuse for school, and we don't use school as an excuse for baseball. And we tell parents that up front. If baseball is more of a hobby and it's just something you like to do, this is probably not going to be a great fit for you here at Penn. And I think it's really helped us, and it might drive some kids away and some families away, but in the long run, I think it's allowed us to kind of elevate our program and get the type of kids that we really want to coach and spend a lot of time around every day.
All right, John, I love to hear that. That's awesome that's your approach. And as you were saying, kind of my question would be, does that turn some people off or does it turn some people on? And you answered that. But I've never coached at an academic institution, even what you have there at Penn. I've always wondered, does it?
His Wi-Fi might have kicked off there. I'm going to pick up something until he gets back with us, Coach. And
Okay.
one of the things that I really want to ask, get a lot of parents that always ask about showcases. Are coaches really paying attention to metrics as well as skill sets, or is there a skill set component that jumps out first and then you go check the metrics, especially at a Showball environment where you have, potentially 100 student athletes or more? Are you noticing the skill set first, the metrics or analytics second, or in reverse?
I just think the way it's structured at a showcase, if you are attending, you're going to see the skill set because the players are in front of you right away. So you're going to see like a kid go out and defensive showcase. So you're going to see the arm strength, or you're going to see the lateral movement from an infielder. And then after that, it's like, okay, who kind of piqued your interest? And then that, after you get the evaluation and the metric, then you're going to go look at those things and see if your eyes are kind of matching up to what the numbers say. Typically if you've done this long enough, they usually do. And then there might be a few kids in there that maybe, I don't know, maybe you watched them throw and the arm strength wasn't great, but you didn't get to see them run a 60 and they're a 6'5" runner. So now you're talking about, all right, well, maybe there's a couple different skills that maybe we didn't see during the showcase. So going into that second day, now you have a list of kids based on both factors, what you saw with your eyes and then also with the numbers that you'll compile, and then you're going to follow those kids the next day and really try to sit on them and watch them and see what they do in the game, the situational game type of experience.
Hey, John, you had mentioned the format of being at a Showball event. I don't know if people understand sometimes that it isn't just about their ability on the field; it's about their character and their makeup. How do parents know, being on the field with those players, being around the dugout with those players, what are you looking for to try to maybe red flag that guy might not be a fit at Penn, or something that attracts you to, hey, that guy's a good fit at Penn, and it fits with his athletic ability too?
Yeah, I think being in a dugout with 15, 16 or 17-year-olds, you can figure some things out pretty quickly, and you're having conversations with guys or listening to a conversation that some of those players might be having about baseball or other things, really. I think the other part of it too, when you're really close and you see kids maybe have a little bit of failure at an event, maybe they miss a ground ball or have a bad at bat, and you're standing right next to them in the dugout, you really get to see how they're, what they're made of and how they're going to handle some of that adversity. I think that's also good. And just being able to talk to guys really in the dugout, or, maybe there's like a meet and greet session, in between where kids will come over and speak with you. I think it gives you an opportunity to really ask some open-ended questions and, see what kids are all about.
John, one of the dynamics that we don't talk about enough, and not just with regard to the Ivy League, but just overall college, is the post-athletic career and the value that your time at UPenn provides for you, your future spouse, your future family, et cetera. Talk a little bit about the alumni, their involvement with regard to UPenn, and how you're truly preparing the student athletes while they're at UPenn for successful futures beyond, the diamond.
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate here. We have an alumni mentor network specific to our baseball program. And one of the things we do is when guys enter their sophomore year, they get paired up with at least one alum. And I have a couple alums that kind of run this program, really just to be able to bounce ideas off of, really more for professional development as guys get closer to graduations, sophomore, junior year, whether it be job opportunities, resume writing, networking, internship programs. And that's really served as a nice tool for our guys. We try to match guys up based on their interests and their major. If we have a guy that's in finance and he wants to get investment banking, we'll try to set that guy up with someone that's working in New York City in that area or that field. It's a nice recruiting tool for us because it does really, it's not just about getting you here, your experience here, but also, as you alluded to, Walter, that next step, which, nowadays, the job market's tough. And I know obviously with an Ivy League degree, you're probably going to have a bit of a head start and a degree from Penn, but like, who knows where things are going here. Things are going so quickly as AI starts to play a more prominent role and maybe certain jobs start to change and alter. Like, you're going to have to be on the forefront of that. I think this is a really good opportunity of having those alums in those fields currently that guys can bounce ideas off and really help as they enter that next phase of their life.
Hey, John, I think sometimes people, and I've always said this in recruiting, the biggest step in any high school player's life is from high school baseball to the collegiate level. Why don't you explain in the life of a baseball player, student athlete at Penn, what all goes on in a day, let's say in the fall, from the time they start in the morning until they're done at night? How impacted is their day?
Yeah, I think here for most of our majors, 4 classes is considered full-time, which is a little bit different than some other schools where you're taking credits and it's 5 classes, 3 credits a piece. So I think like you're probably looking at 2 classes a day. I think that's the biggest thing when you do make that jump from high school to college, no matter where you go to school, is sometimes I don't think student athletes are ready for the amount of free time that they have and how they're going to use that. And I always feel like here, like our best kids, they're not always like the highest SAT kid or the highest GPA kid. It's the kids that are self-motivated, that are good with time management. They're the kids that really do well here. And that time management, what I try to do with the freshmen when they first get here, I said, listen, take 15 minutes on Sunday, right? Hopefully you're using an electronic calendar somewhere. Think about your week. Think about starting from Monday morning when you wake up, what time you got to get to class. Okay, if you have a 9:30 class, what time are you going to wake up to be able to get yourself something to eat, right? We talk about diet, nutrition, getting the proper amount of sleep. And I think there are things you really have to educate younger players on because, 4 months ago, their mom and dad might have been shaking them to get them out of bed to go to high school where they're going to be sitting there all day and all their meals are covered in high school. They don't have to walk somewhere or order it themselves. They just walk into the cafeteria and eat, or maybe somebody's packing a lunch for them. So it's, you got to grow up, and it happens quickly. And I think that's one of the things to be able to provide like the different support areas here. We have a full-time nutritionist. We just build a $10 million fueling station for student athletes above our weight room. So these are the types of things that, those younger players really need to be able to kind of lean on. And I think as a coaching staff, you have to really keep that in the forefront, that these kids just graduated high school a couple months ago, and they really need that structure and support early on. And they're the kids, like, you got to explain to them there's going to be some ups and downs. It's not going to be perfect, right? Sometimes your world starts spinning a little bit, but if you can get through those first couple months, you're probably going to be in a really good spot, and it's different for everybody. Some guys come in and like gangbusters, they start off great when we're doing our fall workouts, our individual work. We typically do that for about 3.5 weeks before we transition into our fall season when we start to inter squad. And then I've had other guys that, started off slow, and by the end of the fall, you're like, wow, that guy's starting to settle in. He's really coming on strong. So it's different for everybody. But I think like here, I think there's a pretty good balance of it. I think the older players in the program, our leaders, our captains, juniors and seniors do a really good job trying to get the freshmen as comfortable as possible. I think that's really important. I think that you need to show those guys that they're welcome. The more comfortable they feel, the more at home they feel, the better they're going to perform.
I think, John, a lot of times parents, families, athletes kind of look at the Ivy League and think, well, what's the caliber of baseball? I think it's safe to say that across all of college baseball, the talent level has been elevated. And I've watched your games recently against A&M and Yale. You've had a lot of extra inning games early in the season. I think it's safe to say that across the Ivy Leagues in particular, the quality and the caliber of play has increased tremendously over the last several years. What do you attribute that to? Is it more of the high caliber athletes seeing that there are draft picks coming out of the Ivy League? There is attention being paid to the Ivy League. Is it the out of conference games that you play? What do you think has really taken that overall quality of Ivy League baseball to that next level that can play literally against anyone in the country?
Yeah, I think you have to start with the coaches. I think there's some really good coaches in our league that have had success. I know for us, I think things really started to change from a recruiting standpoint about 5 or 6 years ago. When we started playing, Power 4 teams to start the season, and we had some success. I think back in like 2018, we won a couple games down at Duke. We went down to A&M and won a series 4 or 5 years ago. And then for us, when we started to do things like that, went to 2 regionals in a row, won some games there. We beat Auburn in a regional. We beat Sanford in a regional. Then people started to realize, like, when we were down in Texas or out in California, out in the Midwest, it was, oh yeah, we know who Penn is now. Like, it started to change a little bit. And I think that's happened to some other teams in our league too, that, teams that have won our league and gone into the NCAA tournament and have really, not only won games, but have kind of been on the edge of maybe pushing in and getting into a super regional.
Right.
So I think that's really like kind of elevated the league, and I think there's something to be said. I know for us this year, we got beat up a little bit early in the year. We played, A&M for 3 games. We played Mercer, who I thought was really talented. And then we played at East Carolina. So, we're not going to shy away from it. Sometimes maybe you get beat up a little bit. And, we had some guys that, we've had to move around with some injuries and things like that. But I finally starting to feel like we're getting into a spot now where guys are starting to settle in and we're getting a little bit of consistency. And, I think the league, at least the time I've been here, I know the talent has really gotten a lot better. I think the coaching's gotten a lot better and the recruiting's gotten better too.
Hey, John, I'm gonna act like I'm a recruit right now, or a recruit's family. Why Penn? Why Penn from an academic standpoint? Why Penn from the baseball standpoint? Yeah,
and it's funny you kind of pose your question that way, because I would probably do the same thing to you if you were sitting in my office. I'd ask you why Penn, right? There's 8 Ivy League schools. Why do you want to choose Penn? So I'd probably flip that around. But to answer your question, I think this place is unique because it's an Ivy League school, but I don't know how much time you spent in Philadelphia. I think there's part of the Philly vibe here on campus where I think it allows us to get maybe a little bit more well-rounded student athlete here, maybe a little bit of a tougher kid, someone that's into the city. I think now if you were to take a tour and you walk through campus on a day like today, you'd be shocked to see how beautiful this campus is. I think, from a player development standpoint, we built a state-of-the-art weight room 12 years ago that's as nice as any Power 4 weight room. We redid our stadium 3.5 years ago. It's now called Tommy Lasorda Field at Michael John Stadium. That was a $5 million project. We built a brand new fueling station above the weight room that I alluded to earlier. That was $10 million. Our locker rooms are being renovated. We're getting a bigger footprint in May. Our strength coach is a baseball guy. We've got a nutritionist. We've got a psychologist that's embedded within our athletic department. There's a ton of things to offer here. And I think the other part of this too, Dave, I've been really fortunate. My 2 assistant coaches have been with me the entire time I've been here as a head coach. And I think that's pretty rare nowadays. And I think they're not only are they great coaches and developers of talent, but they're also great people. If they weren't, we probably wouldn't still be together. I think that's a testament to their personalities.
One of the things, and I want to kind of hone in on that final question, John, is that, you and particularly Mike, I have a lot of interaction with Mike. I'll have a lot of parents that'll say, why Showball? Like, what is it about Showball? Why is that different from any other showcase? Why is that different from any other camp? And I try to get them to understand it's a competitive environment that you're going to have to be a part of at some point within, whether it's the Ivy League or any other school of academic, elite consequence. How do you kind of, when you're out and maybe Mike is joining you at some of these Showball events, what is it about that event that you feel you really get the opportunity to see potential fits? Meaning, why should parents and student athletes really look at the Showball experience as something that might be a cut above with regard to having access to both you and an assistant coach, in your case, Mike?
Yeah, I think you can really check a bunch of different boxes at Showball. That's what I like about it. I think it's a slow enough event where it doesn't feel so rushed at times. You can evaluate skill sets. You can evaluate what a guy looks like in game, where there's a little bit more pressure. It also gives you an opportunity to talk to the student athlete as well. So with those three boxes being checked over 2 days, I think you get a very good look, a good snapshot at the student athlete in general. And it's just an event that, like, I think I really like the people that are involved with Showball too. I think there's good people that are in it for the right reasons. And the way I see it, Showball is one of the many tools that we have when it comes to recruiting on a yearly basis. And it allows us to see a lot of kids throughout the country and just try to be as thorough as possible. And I think that's what Showball provides.
Walter, I'm going to add to that too. I don't know, John's probably been to more than I have. I've been to quite a few over the years, but I like the part at the competitiveness. I feel there's a lot of good players on the field. So you, as a coach, you can evaluate, because you don't get those camp eyes of what I've heard before that goes on at some college camps and all that. You get a lot of people just sign up. But I think there's enough competition on the that if you're interested in somebody, you can evaluate at a better level because they're being tested by other good baseball players. And that's the one thing that I've been impressed over the years, that the competition is plenty good enough to evaluate a player on a daily basis.
Well, John and Skip, I want to say thank you to you both. It's good to put the band back together here, at least for one particular time period during the 26 season. John, I do watch a lot of your games. I'm always curious when I'm able to flip on my ESPN Plus or anything like that, and I'll check out the Yale game or I'll check out the Columbia game with Coach Beede. I think those are great games, regardless of the conference. And I really appreciate you taking the time in season, to both of you, Dave and John, to join me here today.
Yeah, great to be here.
John, good luck this weekend against Cornell, and tell Pep I said hello.
Will do. Thanks.